kids! Welcome to another episode of the Basadours Super Saturdays. So di ba naapa man ang virus sa gawas? So dili sa ta maglaag-laag. Pirmi nato timan na di ta mo gawas kuyog ang daghan na tao. Pirmi ta magsuot sa atong mask. Kung unsay pinaka-importante? Correct! Always wash your hands. Kay kana siya, monay mutabang sa ato na dili ta matakdan. Okay, so karon kuyugi na lang sa mi ug mag-read ta og story. Atong story karon kay about sa Naging Leon si Kuting. Kani siya atong story, dili lang pud ni para sa mga bata. Kita mga ate, kuya, mami, daddy, lola, lolo, pwede sad nato ni magamit na story para ato pong makita kung ngano usahay ang atong mga chikiting, usahay mahimo mag-leon og kalit. So sige, kuyugi ko ninyo, ako si Ate M. I will be your storyteller for today. Naging Leon si Kuting. Kwento ni Eugene Evasco, iginuhit ni Dominic Agsaway at salin sa Ingles ni Becky Bravo. Kakainin ko kayo! Sigaw ni Kuting sa mga inakay. Gulat na gulat sina Pagong at Matsing sa kanilang alaga. Hindi nila ito nakilala sa kilos at asal. Nakasalubong ni Kuting ang mga naglalarong bibe. Tumabi-tabi kayo, sigaw niya. Ang kikembot nyo. Nakita niya ang loro sa hawla. Merienda kita bukas. Hoy, tandang, ang sagwa ng tilaok mo, bulyaw ni Kuting. At kayong mga sisiw, kaya ko kayong dakmain ng sabay-sabay. Dagdag pa ng bagong leon. Pero pagdating sa bahay, nagbabago si Kuting. Nagiging maamo at kaibig-ibig siya at may dala pa siyang pasalubong kina Pagong at Matsing. Nang nasa paaralan si Kuting, nag-isip at nagplano sina Pagong at Matsing. Nagkulang ba tayo? Pag-aalala ni Matsing. Nagagaya siguro siya sa mga kaibigan, sabi naman ni Pagong. Agad nilang pinuntahan ang alagang si Kuting sa paaralan at ang nakita nila'y kabigla-bigla. Tignan natin ano ang nangyari kay Kuting. Yun, nakita nilang tinatakot si Kuting ng kanyang mga kaibigan gamit ang mga maskara. Itigil nyo yan! Magkasabay na sigaw ni Pagong at Matsing. Bawal ang mga siga sa paaralan. Sa gulat, nahulog ang mga maskara ng mga kaklase ni Kuting. Nangako sila kay Kuting na hindi na muling mananakot. Nagpaumanhin din si Kuting sa mga inakay, loro, tandang, sisiw at mga bibe. Mas gusto ka naming bilang Kuting, sabi ni Pagong at Matsing. Hindi na muling magsusuot ng maskarang leon si Kuting. Okay, so that was our story, Naging Leon si Kuting. So what did we learn from the story? Diba, it is not good to bully or hurt other people. We should always support and help our friends. Okay? Sa atong parents and other guardians, sometimes ang kids, they act out because they are copying their friends or ang environment sa gawa. So it is always best to talk to them. So for today's activity, we will be teaching you a song on the ukulele. So I will teach you 3 chords, okay? So C, F, and G7. And it goes like this. So C, F, C, G7. And I'll pass you on to Ate Karen.
Hi kids! Today, since we had a story about ang Kuting na Naging Leon, we also will have a song about the lion. So we are going to sing The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Ready? It goes like this. Never okay, and always be
Thank
kind.
you very much for joining us on another episode of Basadours Super Saturdays. Today we will also be welcoming a very special guest. She comes from a family of teachers and librarians. She's also a librarian and teacher in a private Christian institution. Let's welcome Ate Bea as she shares with us more titles and more books for us to read.
Hi Ate Am! Salamat sa Basadours for inviting me to be a part of Super Saturday. Today I will be sharing my recommended children's literature. For the category of younger kids ages 5 to 7, I chose 3 of my favorite books. The first is Amelia Bedelia. Believe it or not, I only discovered Amelia Bedelia in my late 20s. And even if I put her in the category of younger kids, I still love her as an adult. Amelia Bedelia is absolutely hilarious. She works as a maid for a very wealthy couple, but she always misunderstands their commands because she always takes things so literally. And it's a fun way of teaching children figures of speech and idiomatic expressions. My second favorite, which I did a story of before, are the Berenstain Bears. So the Berenstain Bears, there are so many books in the series. I love them because the stories focus on an imperfect bear family that most people can relate to. So starring a family of bears, the books tackle a wide range of issues like bullying, messiness, lying, good manners, tardiness, helpfulness, and they're absolutely fun. Another favorite of mine is Enid Blyton. Basically, all the books of Enid Blyton, but this one in particular is my absolute favorite. I remember the summer my sisters and I discovered The Enchanted Wood. So there are several books in this series. There's The Enchanted Wood, this is book 1, The Magic Faraway Tree, The Folk of the Faraway Tree, and Up the Faraway Tree. So the stories take place in an enchanted wood in which a gigantic magical tree grows. So it's called the Faraway Tree. And the tree is so tall that its branches reach into the clouds, and in its branches live many magical creatures. So one day, 3 children move into a house near the woods, Joe, Bessie, and Fanny, and there they discover all the creatures of the Faraway Tree. It's really a lot of fun. Now this book here, it's illustrated. Here, let me show you. Some of its pages are illustrated. Here. But really, when my sisters and I were young, we read the book without illustrations, and it was just as magical. So I really think you like this one. For kids 8 to 12, I've had to limit my book recommendations to only 7 books because there are so many good books out there. It was really hard to limit myself to 7 books, but anyway, I hope you like the ones I picked. Of course, Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. So these stories are really good, clean, fun stories, and there are many in a set. This is book 2 of the Nancy Drew series. I can't find book 1. And this is book 1 of the Hardy Boys series. So Nancy is a detective. Her father is a detective or a lawyer, and she sometimes helps him with some cases. Sometimes cases fall on her lap. So Nancy Drew, she goes on many adventures solving these mysteries. Some are really thrilling, some are a little scary, but children of all ages love Nancy Drew. Also for the Hardy Boys, these are brothers, Frank and Joe Hardy, and they also solve many mysteries. This next book was recommended to me by my sister. She absolutely loves this book. She teaches English for elementary students. This is The Mysterious Benedict Society. So one day, let me read the back. A peculiar ad appears in the newspaper, and it says, "Are you a gifted child looking for special opportunities?" When this ad comes out, dozens of children enroll to take a series of mysterious, mind-bending tests. But in the end, just 4 very special children will succeed. Their challenge is to go on a secret mission that only the most intelligent and resourceful children could complete. So here there are 4 books in this series and an additional extra 1 book. And these are really, really fun to read. My third book recommendation is a novel by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. It's called The Egypt Game. Snyder has actually won 3 Newbery Honor Awards. And this particular book is a Newbery Award-winning novel. So this is a really fun book to read. It's about 2 girls who become friends, and then they start this really imaginative game around Egypt. Let me just read a short synopsis. April Hall, the daughter of an up-and-coming film actress, is sent to live with her grandmother in an old apartment house in Berkeley, California. She feels abandoned and masks her grief with truculent sarcasm and Hollywood mannerisms. Her grandmother arranges for her to meet neighbor children Melanie and Marshall Ross, and they bond over imagining games and a shared interest in archaeology. April also investigates a nearby antique shop run by a mysterious and somewhat spooky old man known as the Professor. In the shop's storage yard, the girls discover a replica of the famous bust of Nefertiti, leading them to create a sustained imaginary game about ancient Egypt. So this is a really, really fun read, and I really recommend this book to everyone, even to adults. My next book recommendation is Al Capone Does My Shirts by Jennifer Choldenko. I actually discovered this quite late in life, but it's become a favorite for me, and I recommend it to children and even to adults and young adults. So this book is a Newbery Award-winning book. And let me read the back for you. Murderers, mob bosses, and convicts. These guys are not your average neighbors, but it's 1935, and 12-year-old Moose Flanagan and his family have just moved to Alcatraz, the infamous island that's home to criminals such as notorious escapee Roy Gardiner, Machine Gun Kelly, and of course Al Capone. Moose doesn't actually get to meet the cons, but he does meet Piper Williams, the warden's daughter who comes up with so many schemes that she might as well be a criminal. Now Moose has to try to fit in at his new school, avoid getting caught up in Piper's countless plots, and keep an eye on his sister Natalie, who's not like other kids. All Moose wants to do is stay out of trouble, but on Alcatraz, trouble is never very far away. So this is a really good read. My last 3 book recommendations are fantasy literature, and the first one is The Pride and Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander. This is book 1, the book of 3, but really I recommend all the books in the series. So the Pride and Chronicles is an award-winning series. Book 3, I think, or book 2, The Black Cauldron, was a Newbery Honor book, and the last book of the series, The High King, won the Newbery Medal for the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children. So the stories in this series is based on Welsh mythology, and they have become the standard of excellence in fantasy literature for children. So let me just read a little synopsis. These stories follow the adventures of Taran, the assistant pig keeper, and his quest to become a hero. Along the way, he is joined by an engaging cast of characters that include Elonwy, the strong-willed and sharp-tongued princess, Fluder Flam, the hyperbole-prone bard, the ever-faithful Gurgi, all of whom become involved in an epic struggle between good and evil that shapes the fate of the legendary land of Prydain. my sisters and I really enjoy these books. Back in the day when we were kids, it was so hard to find books, and every time we went to the bookstore, we would always make sure to look for other books by Lloyd Alexander. So I really recommend that book. Of course, we can't do fantasy children's literature without looking at Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis. So there are 7 books in the series. Probably you've seen the movie, but if you've only watched the movie, you should go out and get yourself a copy of the books. They make up some of my favorite memories reading them when I was a kid. So Narnia, this is book 1. It tells the story of 2 children, two neighbors who were sent hurtling to a magical land by one of the characters' uncles who thinks he is something of a magician. And there they encounter, and when they arrive in this magical land, the land is just being created. It's just newly created from the Song of the Lion or Aslan. And there they meet an evil sorceress, Jadis, who tries to take control of Narnia. So it's a really good book. It's a good introduction. And this edition is very beautiful because they come with illustrations. But even if you get the books without illustrations, children's their imagination can supply all the pictures. You won't have a problem with that. And the next book in this series is perhaps the most famous book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So all of the books here are really, really good to read. If you're a parent and you want to read aloud to your children, I recommend my last book, The Hobbit. So this is a great read aloud for kids 8 and up, and it can also be a good read alone for kids 10 or 11 and above. So this is a good introduction to some of the best, perhaps my sister would argue, the best fantasy literature for adults or for young adults, or basically you don't need a certain age to read The Lord of the Rings. You can read it as young as 8 or 9 or 10 if your kids can handle the vocabulary. So this is a really good book, The Hobbit. The language here is really meant for kids, so it's a good introduction to The Lord of the Rings. For children ages 13 years old and above, I've chosen novels that center around the coming of age theme because I think it's something that they will all enjoy and relate to. The first one is The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear. This novel also won the Newbery Award for children's literature. So I really enjoyed this when I was growing up. It tells a story of an orphaned Kit Tyler who has to transfer from her home in a shimmering Caribbean island to New America. So there she feels like a tropical bird in a wrong part of the world, and she learns how to adjust she learns how to love her new relatives, and she also makes strange friends along the way. So this is a really good book. My second book recommendation is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I absolutely love this book. I have several copies of this book. So let me just read to you a synopsis of the novel. The Outsiders is about 2 weeks in the life of a 14-year-old boy. The novel tells the story of Pony Boy Curtis and his struggles with right and wrong in a society in which he believes that he is an outsider. According to Pony Boy, there are 2 kinds of people in the world, greasers and socks. A sock, short for social, has money, can get away with just about anything, and has an attitude longer than a limousine. A greaser, on the other hand, always lives on the outside and needs to watch his back. Pony Boy is a greaser, and he's always been proud of it, even willing to rumble against a gang of socks for the sake of his fellow greasers. Until one terrible night when his friend Johnny kills a sock. The murder gets under Pony Boy's skin, causing his bifurcated world to crumble, and teaching him that pain feels the same whether a sock or a greaser. So this is a really great story because it teaches us not to stereotype people, and that whether you're a greaser or a sock, you still feel the same emotions and you still have the same, if somewhat different, problems. So this is a good book. So that leaves me with only 2 authors left, and I can't imagine being a child, especially being a girl, and not knowing these 2 authors that I have left. The first is Louisa May Alcott, of course, by Little Women. This book I have read so many times. I practically memorized this book. My sisters and I, my cousins and I, we all love this book. And this is really a novel that you should read. I know it's been made into a movie, and the movie is great, but you should still get a copy of the book and read it because nothing quite beats the book. So this, The Little Women follows the lives of the four March sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, and details their passage from childhood to womanhood. And it's a really great book. It teaches you so many lessons, and these four sisters become lifelong friends to you. And of course, Louisa May Alcott had other books. This is another favorite book of mine. I don't know if you can see the title. It's called Eight Cousins. There are two books in this actually, Eight Cousins and Rose and Bloom. And this is for me a masterpiece of children's literature. It's very endearing, and it's an inspiring story about growing up, making friends, and facing life with strength and kindness. So I really love this book. And Louisa May Alcott has other books, of course. For example, in The Little Women, there are continuations to this, like Little Men and Joe's Boys, which should be read. And she also has another standalone book that I love. It's called An Old-Fashioned Girl, but I don't have a copy with me right now. So for the last author I recommend Ella Montgomery. Basically all of her books are good, really good. But in case you've never encountered this writer yet, you should start with her Anne of Green Gables series. This series it has 8 books in the series, and it's really charming and very delightful. So the character of this novel, of this series, her name is Anne Shirley, and she's just absolutely delightful. She's very imaginative. She loves. She keeps on getting into scrapes. She makes a lot of mistakes. She loves long words, long hard words, fancy words, and she's really very delightful. And this series starts with her as a young orphan until she grows up and has kids of her own. So this is one of the best books. Another book of Ella Montgomery that's perhaps not quite as popular as Anne of Green Gables is this book, Emily of New Moon. There are 3 books in this series. Emily of New Moon, Emily Climbs, and Emily's Quest. So I really love this book. It's somewhat similar to Anne of Green Gables, although perhaps a little more serious. And it's just really, really good book. This is my sister's favorite series. So that's it for my children's books recommendation. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I can think of very many off the top of my head that I would like to include in this video, but I can't include them all. So hopefully these books will just act as hooks to get you or your children interested in reading. And it really just takes one book to get them to love reading. One book that's the right book. So I hope the books I've recommended will be the start of a really great reading adventure. Thank you! Join us next Saturday, August 29, for another session of Super Saturdays. Bye!